Ordering the inner life boundaries, attention, and the shape of a faithful soul. Introduction. Most people are not exhausted because they are doing too much. They are exhausted because too much is being allowed inside. Thoughts wander without guidance. Desires pull without discernment. Obligations accumulate without limit. Over time, the inner life becomes crowded, not sinful, just disordered. And when the inside is crowded, even good things begin to feel heavy. This book is not about becoming stricter with yourself. It is about becoming kinder and clearer, not control, but care, not performance, but sustainability. The goal is a faithful soul that can be carried quietly, steadily, through real life. Chapter 1. Why the inner life needs order. There is a kind of tiredness that sleep doesn't fix. You can rest your body and still wake up feeling behind. You can finish a task and still feel unresolved. You can do what is required and still feel as if something is unraveling inside. This is often what happens when the inner life has no gentle structure, when everything is allowed to enter, linger, and demand. Order is not cold. Order is not harsh. Order is a form of mercy. Many sincere people resist the idea of ordering because it sounds like rigidity. They imagine strict routines, tight rules, and an anxious devotion that measures itself constantly. But the order God forms in a soul does not feel like a cage. It feels like a room being made livable again. It feels like space returning. It feels like breath. Disorder is not always rebellion. Sometimes it is simply accumulation, a conversation you didn't process, a disappointment you never named, a worry you've been carrying for weeks, a responsibility that expanded without anyone noticing, a habit of saying yes because you didn't know how to say no. These things gather quietly like clutter, and eventually the soul starts stepping around piles it never intended to keep. Scripture often speaks of peace as fruit, not as reward. It grows best where the inner life is tended with wisdom. For God is not a God of confusion, but of peace. 1 Corinthians 14:33. That doesn't mean you must never feel confused. It means confusion is not meant to be your home. Peace is not meant to be rare. A faithful life is not meant to be lived in constant inner noise. Ordering the inner life begins with noticing what has been allowed to lead. Not everything that demands attention deserves it. Not everything that feels urgent is truly necessary. Not everything you can carry is yours to carry. This is where gentle courage begins, the courage to name what is disordered without shaming yourself for it. The courage to admit you are scattered without turning it into an identity. The courage to let God bring structure, not by force, but by formation. A soul with order is not a soul without emotion. It is a soul where emotion has a place, where thought has a place, where desire has a place, where responsibility has a place, and where God is not one more demand, but the quiet center holding the whole. Order is how love becomes sustainable. Not love as intensity, but love as faithfulness over time. Chapter 2. Attention as a spiritual practice. Attention is one of the most spiritual acts a person performs each day. Not because it feels holy, but because it forms you. Whatever receives your attention begins shaping your inner life, quietly, slowly, consistently. You become like what you repeatedly look at. You begin to carry the atmosphere of whatever you repeatedly absorb. When attention is scattered, the soul feels fragmented. This fragmentation doesn't always look dramatic. Often it looks normal. You function, you respond, you stay busy. But inwardly you are tugged in several directions at once. Your thoughts run parallel, your emotions overlap. Your sense of God becomes faint, not because He left, but because your attention has been crowded out. The goal is not constant focus. The goal is wise return. A faithful inner life is not one that never drifts. It is one that returns without panic. It notices. It recenters. It comes back. Jesus speaks with gentleness about this kind of return. He does not demand that you hold yourself together by effort. He invites you into a simpler center. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Matthew 6:21. This is not meant to accuse you. It is meant to clarify you. Your attention reveals what your heart has been leaning toward. Sometimes your treasure is obvious: God, love, the good. Sometimes your treasure has been quietly replaced by worry, approval, control, or distraction. Not because you chose it with malice, but because it was available and loud and familiar. Attention is not only about what you look at, it's also about what you rehearse. Some minds rehearse problems for safety. Some rehearse conversations to feel prepared. Some rehearse regret because it feels like responsibility. These rehearsals can become a form of inner captivity. Your attention gets used up on things that cannot be solved by repeated thinking. Ordering attention does not mean you stop thinking. It means you stop allowing every thought to become a tenant. A thought can be noticed without being hosted. This is part of the practice, learning to say quietly, "I see you," and then choosing where to place your attention next. Sometimes you place it on the task in front of you. Sometimes you place it on your breath to calm your body. Sometimes you place it on God with a simple inward turning. The smallest return matters. A whispered, "You are here." A pause before speaking, a steadying breath, a moment of gratitude. Attention, offered gently, becomes alignment, and alignment, over time, becomes peace. Chapter 3. The Wisdom of Limits. Limits are not a punishment. They are part of love. A limit says, "This belongs here," and just as importantly, "This does not." It protects what is tender. It keeps the soul from becoming a public hallway where anything can enter. Many faithful people struggle with limits because they equate them with selfishness. They believe love means availability without boundary. They believe saying no is unkind. They believe rest must be earned and capacity must be proven. But love without limits does not become holy. It becomes brittle. A soul without boundaries does not become generous. It becomes overwhelmed. And overwhelmed people often become less patient, less present, and less able to love well. This is why boundaries are not walls. They are wisdom made visible. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Proverbs 4:23. Guarding the heart is not fear. It is stewardship. You are not called to carry everything you encounter. You are not called to absorb every need, every opinion, and every request. Some things you can bless without taking in. Some things you can acknowledge without agreeing to. Some things you can care about without carrying. Limits help you remain a person, not a sponge. This matters especially in a world that is built to invade attention. Devices, news, demands, and constant contact can make the inner life feel like it belongs to everyone but you. And when the inner life is always open, it becomes hard to hear God, not because God is quiet, but because everything else has become loud. A boundary can be simple. It can be a time of day when your phone is not in your hand. It can be a decision not to answer immediately. It can be the courage to say, "I can't take that on." It can be the choice to stop explaining yourself to someone who feeds on your uncertainty. Boundaries do not need to be dramatic to be holy. They simply need to be honest. A faithful soul is not an endlessly expandable soul. It is a rooted soul. A soul that knows its limits and lives inside them with peace. And when your limits are respected, by you first, love becomes sustainable. Your yes becomes meaningful again. Your no becomes clean. Your inner life becomes a place where God can dwell without competing with constant invasion. Chapter 4. Desire and what pulls the heart. Desire is not the enemy. Desire is a compass. It shows you what your heart has been reaching for. It reveals what you believe will make you safe, satisfied, seen, or whole. And because desire is powerful, it quietly shapes the inner life, whether you examine it or not. Some desires are obvious: comfort, approval, control, escape. Others are more subtle: the desire to be needed, the desire to be indispensable, the desire to be praised for being faithful, the desire to avoid disappointing people, the desire to keep the peace by swallowing your own needs. These desires can look like virtue from the outside, but they can still exhaust the soul. Ordering the inner life does not mean suppressing desire. It means learning what belongs at the center. It means asking gently, what am I reaching for and why? David names a deeper longing that sits beneath all the others. Whom have I in heaven but you? And there is nothing on earth that I desire besides you. Psalm 73:25. This is not a sentence of denial. It is a sentence of order. It places God as the desire beneath all desires, the one who can hold the weight of a human soul. When God is not at the center, other things take his place. And when other things take his place, they begin to demand what they cannot provide. They ask you to find life in them. They ask you to be secured by them. They ask you to be defined by them. That's too much to ask of anything created. When desire is disordered, it becomes restless. It is never satisfied. It moves the goalposts. It asks for more, then more again. It can make you faithful on the surface and frantic underneath. But when desire is ordered, the soul becomes calmer, not because you stop wanting, but because your wanting has a center. You begin to recognize impulses without obeying them. You begin to notice cravings without being ruled by them. You begin to say, I understand what I want right now, and then choose what is wise. This is quiet maturity. It is not dramatic. It is steady. It is the fruit of a soul being formed. Desire, when ordered, becomes a pathway to God rather than a substitute for Him, and over time you begin to want what is good with less strain. You begin to love what is faithful with more ease. You begin to experience that deeper satisfaction, God Himself, who does not drain you, but fills you. Chapter 5. Work without overreach. Work is not automatically holy, and work is not automatically harmful. Work becomes heavy when it expands beyond its proper place, when it starts to define you, drive you, or devour the inner life. Many faithful people do not know where their work ends because the mind keeps working long after the hands have stopped. Even rest becomes populated with unfinished tasks. Overreach can be praised by others. It can look like dedication. It can look like maturity. It can look like being needed. But the soul knows the difference between faithful labor and endless output. Faithful labor has edges. Overreach does not. Jesus gives a gentle picture of how life is meant to be carried. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Matthew 11:28-30. A yoke is not the absence of work. It is a way of carrying work. The promise is not that you will have nothing to do. The promise is that you will not have to do it alone, and you will not have to do it in a way that crushes you. Ordering the inner life includes ordering work. This means you learn the difference between responsibility and over-responsibility, between diligence and drivenness, between serving and saving. Some people work too much because they fear what will happen if they stop. Some work too much because silence makes them uncomfortable. Some work too much because their identity is braided into productivity. But God does not measure you by output. He forms you through faithfulness, and faithfulness includes limits. Work can be done with presence. You can do one thing at a time, even if the world trains you to scatter. You can release the need to prove yourself through exhaustion. You can finish the day imperfectly without treating it as failure. Work without overreach means you can stop. Not because everything is done, but because your soul needs to remain ordered. Stopping becomes an act of trust. Trust that God is God and you are not. A faithful life is not one where you never feel tired. It is one where you are not perpetually depleted. It is one where your work has a place and God has the center. Chapter 6. Rest as alignment, not escape. Rest is not only a break from work, it is a return to reality. Some people rest as escape, collapsing into distraction because they are too exhausted to be present. That kind of rest can numb for a moment, but it rarely restores the inner life. Rest as alignment is different. It is rest that reorders you. It reminds your nervous system that it is safe to stop bracing. It reminds your mind that it doesn't have to carry everything. It reminds your soul that it belongs to God before it belongs to any demand. On the seventh day he rested and made it holy. Genesis 2:3. God's rest is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of order. He did not rest because he was depleted. He rested to mark a rhythm, a boundary, a holy edge, a way of living that says, life is not sustained by endless striving. When you rest well, you are not only recovering energy, you are practicing trust. You are saying, with your body and your schedule, God can hold what I release. This kind of rest may include sleep, but it is more than sleep. It can include silence that is not empty, but held. It can include a walk that returns you to your senses. It can include time with people who make you feel safe. It can include worship that is simple and unforced. Rest as alignment is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is very small. A pause before you respond. A breath when you feel rushed. A decision not to take one more thing in. These are forms of rest too, micro-rests that keep the inner life from spilling over. God does not invite you into rest as a reward for finishing everything. He invites you into rest because rest is part of faithfulness. It is part of a soul that can be carried over the time. If you struggle with rest, begin gently. Do not turn rest into another performance. Let it be simple. Let it be honest. Let it be given. Rest is not the enemy of faithfulness. It is one of its foundations. Chapter 7. Guarding the heart. Daily. There is a kind of consistency that is not rigid. It is simply protective. It's the consistency of someone who knows what happens when the inner life is left unattended. Not because they are afraid of life, but because they want to stay whole inside it. Guarding the heart daily does not mean constant self-monitoring. It means small, repeated acts of wisdom. A soul is shaped by what it repeatedly allows, what conversations you replay, what voices you grant authority, what content you absorb when you are tired, what emotions you indulge without question, what worries you feed with constant attention. Guarding the heart is not about becoming closed. It is about becoming clear. Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. Proverbs 4:23. The springs image matters. Springs supply everything downstream. If your heart is polluted with constant anxiety, the day will taste like it. If your heart is crowded with resentment, your relationships will feel like it. If your heart is nourished with truth and presence, your life will carry that steadiness outward. Daily guarding can be gentle. It can be noticing when your inner world is tightening and choosing to soften. It can be confessing quickly rather than hiding. It can be refusing the spiral when you feel tempted to rehearse dread. It can be returning to God in the middle of a normal moment, not only in crisis. Guarding is often quieter than we think. It may look like turning the volume down, not checking again, not taking the bait, not staying in the conversation that erodes you, not absorbing someone else's chaos as your responsibility. A guarded heart is not a heart without compassion. It is a heart that stays rooted enough to love. Consistency over intensity means you don't need perfect days. You need faithful returns. You need small, daily choices that keep the inner life from drifting too far. This is how peace becomes more stable over time, not by force, by care. Chapter 8. A life that can be carried. A faithful life is not measured by how much you can endure in a single season. It is measured by whether your soul can remain steady over years. This is why ordering the inner life matters. Not as self-improvement, but as sustainability. Not as management, but as formation. A life that can be carried is a life with edges, with rhythms, with honest limits, with attention that returns, with desires that are ordered, with work that has boundaries, with rest that is real, with a heart that is guarded gently, daily. It is a life that does not burn itself out, trying to be faithful, because burning out is not a spiritual achievement. God does not ask you to prove devotion through collapse. He forms you into steadiness, quiet strength, rooted love, peaceful endurance. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Philippians 4:5. Reasonableness is not weakness, it is maturity. It is the calm wisdom that refuses extremes. It is the soul that knows when to step back. It is the life that can keep loving because it is not constantly overextended. The Lord is at hand, not as pressure, as reassurance. God is near. So you don't have to carry the whole world. You don't have to carry other people's emotions as your assignment. You don't have to live without edges. You don't have to treat every demand as a command. A carried life is not a perfect life. It is a life that returns again and again to what is true. It is held. It is ordered. It is quietly sustained. If you are faithful but tired, sincere but scattered, longing for peace without retreating from responsibility, this is a hopeful place to end. Not with a list, not with a demand, with a steady picture. A soul with room to breathe, a heart with clear edges, and a life shaped slowly, gently, by the presence of God. Conclusion. Ordering the inner life is not a one-time decision. It is a quiet practice of care. You will notice clutter, and you will clear it gently. You will drift, and you will return. You will feel stretched, and you will relearn limits. You will be tempted to perform, and you will choose faithfulness instead. If you remember nothing else, remember this. God is not asking you to become harder on yourself. He is forming you into steadiness, and steadiness is one of the most loving gifts you can bring into the world. If you'd like a simple way to begin, choose one small act of order today. One gentle boundary, one quiet return of attention, one honest pause, and let it be enough.